Hello everyone and welcome back to Peak Vitality TV. This is episode 3 and I am Dan Kellums with Peak Vitality. And last week we started what was a 3-part series. The first part was on triggering inflammation, that's what we're covering. And we covered the first 2 pieces, which was nutrients and foods, and then also microbes, things such as bacteria, viruses, and fungi. I think last week I kept saying funguses, so it's fungi. But I really enjoy going over these, and what you're going to see is each week as we cover new information and new topics, you're going to hear some stuff you've never heard before, or maybe it's repackaged in a way you've never had it presented. The other thing that you'll have is you're going to have some information that you are familiar with. But as we go, you'll naturally start to understand a little bit more about what it takes to get your body healthy, and maybe what's missing or why you haven't been able to get your health over the hump. And that's the whole idea, is to give you the knowledge that you need in order to regain your health and get the life back that you want to be living. So today we're going to be covering the next piece in the 5 triggers, and this is to help you understand what's causing your inflammation. So like I said, last week was foods and nutrients and then microbes, and this week we're talking about stress. Now, we break stress down into 2 categories: physical stress and emotional stress. Now, physical stress I think is a little bit simpler, so we're going to cover that first. So when it comes to physical stress, people come in all the time and they say, well, why look at the physical structure of the body? Well, that's a super important piece. For instance, if you're looking at a joint, because most people as we age will get arthritis, and when you're looking at arthritis, there's going to be 5 pieces to that arthritis, to the joint breaking down. Is it the shock absorbers? We call it the 5 S's. The shock absorbers, such as the meniscus and the cartilage. Is it the stabilizers, like the ligaments and tendons? What about the strength? And that's going to be your muscles. What about the source of blood and nerve signaling, right? So signaling and source. And the last S is symmetry. Is the joint out of alignment, or is your back or your hip or your neck? So those apply to any joint. So anytime you have these structural components of a joint that are off, you're going to naturally get some inflammation, which if the inflammation is in the joint, you're going to get a corrosive environment. That triggers more inflammation. What's also going to happen is you'll get erosion because a joint's not moving the way that it's supposed to. So erosion and corrosion are going to be really key pieces to the arthritic process. And when you have that, that's triggering inflammation. And something that's really key to understand is when you have inflammation in your body, let's say it's in a joint, it doesn't say self-contained in the joint. What's going to happen is that it's going to leach into the lymphatic system and the bloodstream. And so those are key pieces to understand. So inflammation in a joint doesn't just affect the joint, it affects the whole body. So it's like a slow drip poison. So it can slowly cause inflammation for years and years and years and years. And so that just eats away at your overall health. So I tell people all the time, if you have a structural problem, if you have arthritis or pain, you want to get that looked at, because that's going to disrupt the body. So the next piece with the physical stress of the body would be a lot of chiropractors and osteopaths and even acupuncturists that are looking at how the whole body is looking, because they say that the weight of a dime, think how light that is, on a spinal nerve can decrease circulation up to 60% anywhere those nerves feed. So let's say it's the nerves in the neck. Well, those feed the thyroid. And how many people have thyroid issues, right? So if you're decreasing circulation to your thyroid by 60%, how much loss of function are you going to get there? Well, that physical structure is going to create undue stress. It's going to cause organs not to be nourished the way they need to. So if it's lumbar spine and the low back, right? So these lumbar nerves are going to feed the digestive tract. And so in the lower, some of the lower organs and even the legs. So that's going to allow things to be, nourished less signaling, less communication with the body, so you get disruption there. So with physical trauma or physical stress, you look at, it isn't just trauma. It can be structural issues from the spine or the individual joints in the arthritis. But also if the body's off or you've had trauma to something, that can be disrupting function. So when it comes to physical stress, there's several things that we want to look at. And then the last piece of stress that I want to talk about is emotional stress. And this is a huge components. So I just want to kind of dive into this lightly. We can do a 10-part web series on emotional stress, but you know, when you're feeling emotional stress, regardless of the trigger, if you're in inflammation, you've ever sat in traffic, you got deadlines to meet, everybody knows emotional stress. But that emotional stress is triggering your flight or fight response. And that flight or fight response is good for short amounts of time. But if it's going on too long, it's going to disrupt things. So that flight or fight is going to decrease circulation to the digestive tract. It's going to increase your cortisol levels. And I'm going to tell you, we could do a whole thing on cortisol as well. Cortisol damages the hippocampus, which is responsible for memory. It disrupts the communication from the brain to the thyroid. So if you have thyroid issues, it could just be emotional stress. It's going to thin the mucous membrane in the gut. And it suppresses the immune system. So that's just cortisol. That's one piece of it. But if you have a constant increased stress response, your muscle tone is going to be a little bit increased. That can cause other issues like poor memory, muscle tears, muscle tension. That goes back to the physical stress, right? So emotional stress, it not only is going to disrupt things like cortisol, but it's also going to disrupt all your other hormones. It's going to cause an imbalance in your neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine, and it will trigger inflammation as well. So when we're looking at stress, we got two components, physical and emotional. And those are large baskets to put a lot of information in to try to understand it, but you have to look at that, right? So don't dismiss what your day-to-day activity is. If you think maybe you have a lot of stress, then it's something you want to look at. How are you handling that? And on the other side, your stress, you may be used to it, but maybe your body's not. So when it comes to the stressors, when it comes to these things, I want you to look at it. So think outside the box. Think about the physical and the emotional components. So that's it for today. That's our stressors, physical and emotional stress. Next week, we're going to be covering hormones and toxin or toxic accumulation. So hope you got some good information. I look forward to seeing you guys again. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you soon.